Audacity in 3, 2, 1.
Hi guys, and welcome back to the Barbell Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Christina Lynn, and I'm here with my co-host, Marissa Roy. And in today's episode, we're going to chat all about eating out at restaurants.
Yeah, I just realized that this is very timely because I'm going to a concert tonight.
Oh, there you go. What concert are you going to?
I'm going to see Train.
Oh, very exciting. Your elevator music.
I know. I know. If you're not a follower on Instagram, I put up a post like the other day that was like 10 random facts about me. And I think something that's like actually unique about me, or maybe I just think I'm a special sunflower. You guys can tell me, you message me if you're listening to this, but I think my music taste is definitely very different than the average 25-year-old in this day and age. I feel like a lot of people just like really geared towards like EDM, or I do enjoy country. I do listen to a lot of country because of Aaron, but not like, it's not self-motivated. So like country or like a lot of like hip hop, rap, like all of that stuff. And literally all I listen to is like Matchbox 20, The Train, The Script, and like a lot of bands with like that were like popular in like the early 2000s or like 2010s era. So yeah, and some even 90s. Like I know Matchbox 20 is definitely an older one. My mom actually introduced me to them. So yeah, tell me if I'm weird or because like we'll be in Best Buy, we'll be in a restaurant, we'll be at a bar, and there will be Matchbox 20 playing or Train, and I'll be like, hey babe, guess who's playing? He's like, I don't know, Rob Thomas, Matchbox 20. And I'm like, yes, every time, because that's what they play.
Like grocery stores and like elevators are your favorite place to be.
Dude, like I sing along at the grocery store so much because of that. It's great.
I think it's so funny because I think it's really interesting because like sometimes you'll say something or like you won't get a reference and I'm like, wow, there really is an age gap. So like we kind of grew up with Matchbox 20, so it wasn't anything like special. It was just like, oh, here we go. So the fact that you're like obsessed with them is like
yeah, they're just like my go-to sing-along like road trip music. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like I hit the point where like I stopped listening to new stuff and I was like, all right, I'm an adult now. That's what this means.
Yeah, my music taste has definitely changed throughout the year. And I put up a post recently too about like weird facts where it was like my 13-year-old self would cringe at the music that I listen to now. Cause
don't you listen to like bluegrass?
Yeah, like the honkier the better. Like it's like like banjo, like all that, like. But when I was like 13 like I would literally listen to like rap and hip hop and like R&B, and like my dad and I would always fight over the radio, so we would usually like switch off per song. So he'd like listen to one of his radio stations and then like I would switch over, and like that's how we would do the our car rides. But I don't know what happened. I don't know if it's just because like I really hate the rap that's like out now. It's just like gibberish and like I don't know. I just, what do they call it, like mumble rap or something? Yeah. So I just like started to get away from that, and I listened to like classic rock. I listened to like heavy metal, which is so random.
That's weird.
Yeah, I know. And it like, and then again the bluegrass and country and I don't know. So I feel like I have a very, very weird taste in music because I still love like EDM and like I don't know.
That's so funny.
But yes.
You remind me at the end of this, after we record, I need to send you this really funny reel pertaining to R&B and like soul music.
Yeah, it's really funny. Like I feel like there are a lot of reels on Instagram where it's like they will play like, you know, a minute's, but it's like 10 seconds worth of music and it's like dance if you know this song.
Yeah.
And it just like breaks my heart, like the stuff that I grew up listening to and no one knows. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so old.
Yeah, there's a lot of them that like I'll watch and I'll be like, oh my God, like these people don't know these songs. And like I'm not even like I consider myself on the younger side, but like at this point, the people making these reels are like 18 years old and they don't know jack shit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that little
Anyways,
random,
restaurants.
yeah, fun facts. But I guess I don't know, we can transition like restaurants play music at restaurants.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to a concert tonight and
There
we're
you
going to
go.
get sushi
There you go.
beforehand because no one like in our group knows any of the openers. I don't really care for any of the openers. So we're just going to show up late and just be there for the train.
There you go.
But basically, we wanted to debunk some misconceptions around eating out when it comes to your fitness goals and kind of teach you guys how we approach it. Because Christina and I think one benefit of this episode is we do approach eating out a little bit differently. I will say, since I moved, been eating out a lot less, like a lot less, which is really nice. But at the same time, we don't really cook as elaborately as you do. So different kind of like just backgrounds on eating out, how we approach it, and how you guys can navigate it. So first thing that I wanted to debunk was the biggest misconception that I think like was almost like a huge light bulb for me, because a lot of times I will talk with prospective clients or clients and their biggest struggles, they're just like, well, I just eat out a lot. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a problem, but most people perceive that to be a problem because it's just like most people understand that portion sizes are bigger at restaurants, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, or they know that like fast food is quote unquote bad for you, or they have whatever heuristics that are like very easy to remember, but they don't really look into or take the time to even think about the nuance, because I mean, like, unless you study health, fitness, and nutrition, why would you? So the heuristic that they lean on is eating out equals bad and eating from home equals good and healthy. And that's pretty much it. But I mean, as we know, as professionals, eating from home can be very unhealthy and eating out can be very healthy. And so I did want to just give you guys that shift in perspective before we even start this conversation. And that's not to say that you should eat out for every single meal all the time. Like there's some lifestyles where that has to be the reality, but for most people it's not. And we definitely do encourage, obviously, cooking from home, eating homemade food, learning those skills and fueling your body with fresh stuff that you make. But that's not, the end all be all. And it doesn't always work for everyone all the time. So yeah, that was the first thing.
Yeah, so I think that's a really good yeah, what people have that misconception, and it's like you can still eat at home and eat really bad
Yeah.
or make meals that are not, quote unquote healthy. So I think that was a great kind of first thing to dive into. So I think the other thing that I wanted to talk about is like the second misconception is just because we're talking about staying on track at a restaurant doesn't mean that you have to eat a salad, or like lettuce every single time you go out. Otherwise, you're going to be off track, because that's just not the case either. And maybe you do eat a salad, and little do you know, like it's packed with it's like 2,000 calories just because of what's on the salad and everything like that. So we'll go into kind of like the more tangible takeaways, and how you can order a salad and make it healthier, or order something else and make it healthier. But you don't have to not enjoy going out to eat. Like that's not what we're going to say is like, oh, you just don't do it or eat a salad. So
yeah, I think that's actually a really good segue into like how we were going to kind of pre-frame two different approaches to this,
yeah.
right? Because, like Christina said, you don't have to, you can enjoy eating out and you can do it regularly. And we've talked about this before on the podcast about how like our lifestyles are just a little bit different. Like Christina does not eat out very much. And we were in a phase where we ate out very, very much, but that was like prior to the move. I joke, but like I genuinely think we were kind of in the mindset like, oh my God, it's the last time we're going to be able to eat at this place. We have to get it all in now type of thing before we moved from this place that's like so laden with convenience and all these different cuisines, and like moving to a town north of Charlotte that's a little bit more rural, that is a lot more just like there's barbecue and there's American food and there's not much else in between. So like there is more than that, but like it can kind of feel that way in comparison. And so we definitely like probably from like February to May, we're just like, let's make
Oof.
sure we eat. I'm surprised I didn't gain more weight than I did, to be honest.
Yeah.
But that's because of some of the tips that we're going to talk about. So the main thing I wanted to pre-frame there was, you've got two different people here that are going to be giving you tips about this. One, myself, who we still do eat out more often than Christina, and definitely have had my experiences eating out a frick ton, like probably, I would say on average 3 to 6 times per week, like probably most meals every weekend when I was back in Northern Virginia, and then like at least once or twice during the week for dinners, just out of convenience. And yeah, the bill racks up on that a lot too. And then, on the other side, I mean, how often do you eat out, Christina?
I was going to say maybe like 3 times a month.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So just very, very different. So, and that's not to say that like, I mean, we're going to talk about like how our approaches are different when we eat out. But while I am a little bit more lax when it comes to my choices, and I guess I'll kind of go into this right now. So like when I go out to eat, because I don't eat out very, very often, I kind of take more of approach of like, what do I want? Like just
Yeah.
like whatever I want. Like, so Marissa, when we were in Phoenix, like I went out and like got tacos for almost like every meal just because like that's what I wanted. And like I don't really get the option to like explore different foods in different restaurants. So I like to just kind of get whatever. But I still have certain principles in mind when I'm going out to eat. I'm like, okay, where does this fit into my daily like macros? Where's my protein intake? Like, I'm not going to have like 5 drinks. Like I'm probably gonna have water, like just small things like that that just make it so I can eat what I want and not really see any sort of change on the scale or any change to my progress.
Yeah. Yeah. And then like on the flip side, for me, eating out is not as much of a novelty. And I think that's really where it comes into play, is like it was a part of our routine, and it was just like something I was so used to doing and like honestly got really tired of. And so because of that, kind of had to wrap my head around, every meal out, the mindset of every meal out is not a free for all. Every meal out is not, the treat meal, because it's literally like multiple times per week and on the weekends, and it's lunch and dinner on the weekends and blah, blah, blah. And so what I really had to learn how to do was like truly just order like basically what I might make at home, or like just kind of keeping it tame, because the thing is the reason why eating out has such a bad rep for health and fitness is because portions are bigger nowadays. And the cooking methods that are used at restaurants, typically things are cooked in butter and oil and are just made to please people, right? The food is made to taste good at like most places. So it would obviously be a disservice to the customer if everything was made completely dry and only salt and pepper and really boring, right? So you have to keep in mind that there's going to be extra fat from the oil. You have to keep in mind that there's going to be just larger portions overall of things. And, that's meant to kind of satisfy just the industrialization of our whole country, and like the overwhelming demand for larger and larger and larger portion sizes with food everywhere. So kind of had to learn, a lot of skills, how to really stop when I'm full, how to bring leftovers home and not clean my plate, how to make swaps when I'm ordering and not be afraid to kind of be demanding in what I want, and not be afraid to do that. And also just like kind of make those additional swaps that might, to a lot of people, seem like extra sacrifices. And if you don't eat out often, then it's going to be extra sad. But for me, it was just like, well, I really don't need fries again, So yeah, so a lot of different things. We can go into what those skills are for sure.
Yeah, so I think that maybe we'll talk about like again, so the pre-frame is just kind of like, all right, like what are your goals? Like what are your goals right now? So if you're in, and we talk about this all the time, if you're in more of like a maintenance or you're in a building phase, like you can be a bit more lax with your food choices and you don't have to be as strict. If you are dieting, and like if I was dieting, then yes, 100% my choices are going to look more like Marissa's when I go out to eat. But because I'm in this phase right now where I am like actively in a fat loss phase, but I'm not like severely restricting. Like I'm just still making conscious, like healthy choices. So normally, like I mentioned before, I go out and just kind of get whatever I want, and that's fine. And I will do some things like will still do some of the tactics that we talk about. Like I'll get dressing or sauces on the side. Like I want to control my portions in that sense. I'm listening to my hunger and fullness. If I need to take some things home, I'm trying to still make sure that what I'm eating, I'm not just eating like a plate of like buttered noodles. Like I'm still having like protein. I'm still 99% of the time I'm having like water with my meals. And like kind of like watching where my calories are coming from. So all of those things and just kind of how that fits into my overall day to day. And like I kind of go out with like I'm just going to enjoy this meal and not really worry about anything else. But there's still habits that I have that are automatic. But if I were dieting, even though I'm not going out as often as Marissa, I'm still going to kind of go into the tactics that we have if you are eating it more frequently, or if you want to approach it with like being more on top of your goals.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess like it's really important to consider context here too.
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about eating out at restaurants, like we can talk about it in the isolated sense of like when you order X, Y, and Z and do it this way. But also it's really important to consider like, what about the rest of your day? What about the rest of your week? Right. And so like, is this like on the weekend where you're eating out 4 out of 6 meals, if you even eat 6 meals on the weekend, and you're going to have to kind of pick and choose and be choosy for like when you're going to splurge, right? Because like of those 4, like, is it realistic to say you're not going to splurge at all? Probably not. Like there's usually some give and take in all of that for myself, for sure. So and depending on obviously what kind of a phase you're on, sometimes maybe right now, for example, I'm in a fat loss phase. I'm 7 weeks out from my wedding, and I'm really trying to grind through it and be very, very kind of strict in a way. And so like, that's okay. And I'm going to have to white knuckle it. And maybe I will have to make some more sacrifices, quote unquote, on all the meals out and not deviate. But in most phases of my life, and what I will say is like probably for most of our clients, that's not the case. So kind of being picky and choosy as to like, okay, if I know I'm going to eat out 4 times, like really kind of when you sit down with each menu, let's say you don't know what 4 restaurants you're going to eat at, so you can't plan ahead or look at all the menus and whatever, and you're just kind of doing stuff on the fly on the weekend. When you really sit down with that menu, just being like really asking yourself this question, like, is this the time where like this is the thing that like I'm never going to be able to eat again, right? Or like this is like my favorite thing that like I haven't indulged in a while, and it's like truly, truly worth it to me, kind of that hell yes food factor. Versus, could I get this anywhere? Is it going to be second rate compared to the place that I really like this thing at? Like, am I like, basically like, is it going to be worth it and worth the sacrifice in that way? And so really kind of playing those pros and cons out, even if you don't know what's ahead in terms of your meals, like just having those questions in the back of your pocket.
I don't know if anyone watches Tom Segura, but the first thing I thought of was when he is talking about how he's a little bit larger and he put on some weight, and he went and got a croissant, and then he was passing a restaurant and he saw another bakery and got another croissant, and then he was like, and the highlight of that was being able to say, oh, the first place was better. But yeah, I think that's really like interesting. So I think about like if I were like going on vacation, like we have if I don't know if anyone has ever been to Sunset Beach, but they have this like Calabash Creamery, and it's like just like an old school ice cream place, and it's just hilarious. Like when I go with my husband's family and they get like 1 scoop and like a little cup, and I get like 2 scoops and a cone, because I'm like I never do this. I'm never going out and getting ice cream. So like this is like this, I have this like maybe once every like 3 years. So like in that instance, like I just whatever goes out the window. So I think that's really smart. And especially if you're going out 4 times, it's not like, okay, every single time I go out to eat, I'm just like, this is my last meal and I'm going to eat everything.
Yeah. And also like it just gets really unenjoyable at a certain point if I do
Yeah.
approach it that way, because, kind of thinking about mindful eating tips for this, like just listening to your hunger cues. Like a lot of times when you go out to eat, all the hidden butter and oil and seasoning and MSG and shit that you're eating, like it'll keep you fuller for longer. And so you're going to be like approaching dinner time, you're like, well, I'm still full from lunch. Cool. Okay. Well, then you don't need to order the burger with fries for dinner. Maybe that is a time where you get a soup and salad, right? And you kind of just chill, right? Because
Yeah.
you really have to be able to, when you're in these situations, especially when you eat out a lot, tune into your body, because your body will tell you the most reliably, like what's really going on. Even if you because tracking can be really unreliable when you go out to eat at restaurants. If you're tracking your calories, your macros, like you're basically just plugging in your best shot in the dark that you can. Some places will be easier than others. And that's not to discourage you from doing it, but it's just the truth. Like it's not going to be fully accurate.
Yeah.
And so maybe you tracked something as 500 calories. And normally when you eat a 500-calorie meal, these are skills that you build when you track food, like that you feel full for however long. And if that's not happening and you're still full for like hours and hours after that, maybe there was more in that meal than you thought. Right. And like, maybe that's like a learning experience for you to think about. So just like really, I don't want to underemphasize listening to your body in these situations, because as hard as it is, if you are just kind of a frequent restaurant goer, it can teach you a lot.
Yeah. And something that I was, that you made me think of when you're talking is, if you're kind of on the other end of the spectrum, if you think, well, I ate out and what I ate wasn't good, therefore I probably shouldn't eat the rest of the day, because I know a lot of women who feel this way and label food. And I have seen it firsthand because my mom is like this. And I think I've given this example before, where we like went out to, we had whatever she had, I made her breakfast. And I'm like this too. Like, we had a lighter breakfast because we knew we were going out to lunch. We were going to go to a couple different places because that's what we love to do. And then it was dinner time and I'm hungry and I'm like, hey mom, like, what do you want to eat for dinner? And she's like, oh, no. Like, I can't eat the rest of the night. Like, I'm done eating. And I was like, what? And she's like, I'm done eating. So I was like, why? And she's like, well, because we were bad. And so I was like, okay, give me your phone. And so I pulled up my Fitness Pal and I plugged in everything we ate and I showed her, I'm like, okay, this is what we ate at lunch. I'll plug it in and I'll overestimate. Like we had this, I'll plug it in and overestimate. And I'm like, you're at 900 calories. And she was like, oh. And I was like, yeah. I was like, you feel like you ate more than you did, but this is overestimating. And I was like, so do you want something for dinner? And she was like, well, yeah. I'm like, okay. But she still wanted to keep it light. But I feel like it's just like when we talk about putting things into the entire context of your day, like still making sure you're not overeating or under eating, and just being able to adjust. So I think that it's really good. While we do talk a lot about how portion sizes and there's oil and there's butters, if you're not paying attention to what you're eating, you still have the opportunity to undereat as well. So just like, this is why it's great to track and really get an idea of how much you should be eating throughout the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's another thing is like when you're building this healthy lifestyle for yourself, one thing that tracking your food, especially when you're at home, helps you do is really understand like, what do your meals need to look like throughout the day in terms of like what goes on your plate in each portion of the day? Like if you're dieting, do you have a carb source in every meal or just like 2 or 3 of them? Do you have like additional fat added to your food, or like do you just stick with the fat that's in the protein source or whatever, right? Depending on what phase you're in. And so if you can get a visual of that throughout the week, I like to think of eating out at restaurants as like, if you can imagine an athlete in
knew you were going to say this.
A sports season. This is my favorite analogy. I had one person who was a soccer player and she's an athletic trainer now who works with kids in season. And so I used it with her and she was like, light bulbs. But imagine an athlete who practices, and practice is a controlled environment, right? So you're doing drills, you're working on skills, you're doing things that are much less risky. That's like eating from home and tracking and weighing and logging your food, right? You know exactly what's going into your body. But you're going to have scrimmages, you're going to have game time, right? The scrimmage might just be like one meal out where you can like look up the menu ahead of time and like plan it all in and pre-track it and blah, blah, blah. And game time might be your vacation. where you have to go a whole week eating out at every meal, and you're going to have to see how you do, right? And so you have to kind of treat it that way, where it's not that tracking your food is the diet, but tracking your food is giving you the tools to understand your nutrition for the lifestyle. And that's a really hard distinction to make, because we're so conditioned to think of methods as the solution rather than methods as a tool to the solution. And the solution itself is just, do we consistently make these types of choices over and over again? And do we really understand what our body needs and how to serve it? And macros are just a tool to get us there. So little bit of a tangent, but really what I want you guys to be thinking about is, when you're considering the full context of your day, like really understanding that, like, that practice that you're putting in, if you are tracking your food, is going to translate, and it's going to give you a better idea to, like, when you do eat out, if you'll know if you overdid it or underdid it. You'll know if you are probably way over your calories, or like maybe you're a little under, or you're right on target, right? And so that's kind of the knowledge base. It's really hard to get that kind of knowledge base with a lot of other approaches, because you're just not learning that hard data like you otherwise would.
Yeah. And another thing is, like, every single game. So every time you go out to eat and you're practicing your skills, also know that maybe you take a loss, right? Like maybe you have a instance where you like went home and your weight shot up, 3 or 4 or 5 pounds or something like that, or you came home from vacation and like you just weren't able to maintain, or whatever it might be, or you went out and you gave into social pressure to like get dessert when you didn't want dessert and you were full and you overate, things like that. It's like, it's not a loss. Like, we need to reframe and think about, okay, well, what did I learn from this situation? I have a lot of clients that have a lot of anxiety around eating out. And then throughout our time together, throughout multiple opportunities to practice their skills, they just continue to get better and better and better. And I recently had a client who was struggling like this, and she went out and she mentioned that she was getting a lot of social pressure from her peers to change what she was eating. And I was telling her, I said, this is not a reflection on your choices. It's a reflection on them. Because usually when people go out to eat, they do want to eat them a little bit more like gluttonous, and they want to get all the things and have all the desserts and get all the wine. And I said, and your choices are different, and that's okay. And like, don't feel pressure to eat out. And she also talked about, like, now going out to eat, she doesn't eat to the point where she's like over full and feeling gross and disgusting when she gets home. She's like, I feel empowered by my choices. I feel empowered when I get home, knowing that I stayed on track and can do this and can fit this into my lifestyle and still lose weight every single week. So it's not like you're going to listen to this episode and then magically everything is great the next time you go out at a restaurant. It's going to take practice. So don't avoid eating out. It's just an opportunity to learn and get better and refine every single time you do.
Yep. Couldn't have said it better.
So let's go into kind of like tangible, takeaways and what people can do.
Perfect. So, tracking wise, anything actually, I would say, big ones are dressing on the side on salads, or sauces on the side on pretty much anything with a sauce, like even sandwiches, like, chicken sandwiches almost often come with like an aioli or whatever. Always ask for it on the side. You can ask for things with no cheese. You can ask for things with no butter, no oil. And that is sometimes a little bit trickier of one, because like some recipes are just hard to. I remember one time I was trying to order like a shrimp stir fry, and it's like made in a wok. And so like they were basically like, it'll stick if I don't use oil. And I was like, okay, can you use less? And they were like, okay, we can do that. But they couldn't use none. But for most things, you can ask for things cooked dry is the term, or just without butter or oil. I know Mexican places are always really good about listening to that, at least in my experience. And you can also, another option is you can ask for like burgers and sandwiches like on a lettuce bun. It's usually not on a menu, but many places will do it because there's usually lettuce in a burger anyways. So I'm blanking, fill in my Like
The other
asking.
thing I was going to think is kind of like what you're saying is like, even if it's not on the menu, you can always ask. Like, and there's like the nice way to ask, and then there's like other ways. But sometimes the waiters or waitresses may not know, and they'll go back and ask the kitchen and just be like, "Hey, is this possible?" And they'll be like, "Yeah, we can do that." So, not to be a huge pain in the ass, but like you can definitely try to make substitutions, swaps, or kind of like adjust to get what you want. So when I can't remember where I was, but I had asked, they were like chicken skewers and the side was like rice or something like that. And I was like, can I just get that on like a huge bed of lettuce? And they're like, sure. Like, like
Why not?
whatever
Yeah.
works. Yeah. 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 So a lot of places are just like really good about being accommodating.
Yeah. Some places will be better than others, but I'm thinking
Yeah.
of like my cousin right now. He's like, I think 2 or 3 years younger than me. And he like got really into bodybuilding and like lifting and eating right and all of that. And we were at a restaurant and he started a diet and he ordered like a just a bowl of their greens and a salmon fillet, but like no oil or butter or anything. And it was like, it was so funny because like I saw this past version of myself in my cousin, and I was like, wow, that was me. And like I was being
Yeah.
a little bit more flexible, but like, those things can be done. And a really good way that you can kind of either up your confidence with this or just like feel like you kind of have an out instead of just being like that difficult Becky who's ordering like the crazy shit is you can kind of joke with the waiter and be like, hey, promise you won't hate me after I do this, but blah blah blah. And like, can I get this and this? Or like you can kind of like joke on yourself. You're like, I'm gonna be that girl and I hope it's okay. I really appreciate it. And just thank them ahead of time. And then also like if you feel really bad, because I know a lot of people just struggle with guilt of like asking for extra, which like remember they are in the service industry. So like
Yeah.
their
Tip
job
them.
is to, serve you. And then
Yeah.
in return, just tip better than maybe you would have otherwise, right? Like
Hmm.
leave a 25, leave a 30% tip. Like
Yeah.
if they do go that extra mile for you, and all that. So some tips with just confidence there. Cause I know really for a lot of people, it's just like asking that's the problem.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And the other thing that you can do too is like make like swaps, like Marissa was saying. So like there are certain places where like, oh my God, their fries are just like to die for. So I'm like,
Yep.
I know that I'm getting this, or I know I'm getting mashed potatoes. So I want this. So like maybe I'll get a lettuce wrap, like you were saying before, or maybe I'll get something that's a little bit more protein heavy so I can get this on the side. So just kind of like being more conscious like that. And like I feel like salmon is always like a really good one to use because salmon is delicious, but it is higher in fat. So like just being more conscious of like throughout the day, like maybe I just kind of take it easy and like instead of eggs, I do egg whites. And then by the time dinner comes, like I can still eat what I want and stay on track. So just kind of like little things like that. So if I'm getting salmon, maybe I'll ask for things with no oil and no butter. So um, I think that's a really good one. And then also kind of knowing sometimes like if you are going to more of like a sit down restaurant, like knowing that there's going to be a bread basket, like knowing that that's probably going to be something to think of as well, or maybe like appetizers. So lots of things to consider.
Yeah. Yeah. And shoot, I was gonna say one more thing. Oh yeah. This is like a really simple one, but I think a lot of people overlook it, just like the first misconception that we broke. But like if something's written on the menu as like this is the entree and here's the two sides that come with it, like you can ask to sub. That's why there's a
Mhm.
list of sides. And I think a lot of people just like take the menu as it is and they just like there is no other option except I have to pick between, this evil and that evil, right? And like that's really not the case. Like a lot of times I've never been in a situation where I've asked, can I swap this side out for, grilled asparagus or whatever vegetable side is on their menu and have them say no, unless you are literally at like a fine dining, like you cannot ask for substitutions on the menu place where like it will literally be written on the menu, do not ask for substitutions. And in that case, if you're fine dining, like I've probably only done it like once or twice in my life, but like if you're there, like
Enjoy
You
your
should
meal.
probably enjoy that, unless
Yeah.
that's just like your regular life, in which case I'm honored that you listen to this podcast.
And hit us up for coaching. No.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, again, it's kind of that like, yeah, like what is this meal in relation to like the rest of your meals throughout the week?
Yeah. And then I guess like a couple tips for just like mindfully eating at restaurants. We've already mentioned a few, but I want to just recap them. So like eating until you're 80% full rather than 100, because if you wait till you're feeling like 100, by the time you leave the restaurant, you will feel 120%.
Yeah.
And like kind of dividing your plate into thirds or quarters when you get it. Like right when you get the plate, you know, if you have a burger, like cut the thing in half, right? And just like start with half and like really assess how you're feeling after each section that you kind of section off. Another tip that I actually really like, I didn't come up with it, one of my assistant coaches did, was favorites first. So instead of like, you know, a lot of times the mindset is like, let me eat the vegetables off the plate first, and then I'll get to this, and then I'll eat my favorite thing last. The problem with that is that if you are trying to like really just conserve calories and all of that, you will often find that you're going to be more tempted to overeat if you leave your favorite thing for last and you're already full. So instead, have the thing you love the most first, and then see how you're feeling by the time you get to the other stuff. Does that mean that you might, you know, leave some veggies on the table, maybe some protein on the table for later? Maybe it does. But like at the end of the day, like what's your priority? Is it calories in versus calories out? Okay, well then enjoy the favorite thing first and don't blow your calorie goal, right? So that's a really good one that I liked. And then finally, just like really chewing your food, like what we call it as wine tasting your food, but like really, really chewing it and tasting the flavors and like not just like inhaling. Something that I've like, me and Aaron have like made fun of each other for, more so me to him, is like I'll kind of wonder if he's breathing when he's eating sometimes, because it'll just be like bite after bite after bite, and I'm like, did you even fully chew that one before you like put your fork in your mouth again? Like, and so that's something that we've kind of been trying to be on each other with, because it's like you don't really realize how quickly you're eating until you stop and be like, did I chew and swallow before I picked up the fork again? And most people, the answer is no.
Your digestion will thank you for doing that pre-chew. But yeah, so the other thing I will say is like there are some clients who get a little bit of anxiety going out to eat because of the accuracy, because they want to be accurate. So you can kind of use the same approach when ordering, where it's like, okay, well, let me get, you know, chicken, like rice and broccoli or something like that. Just kind of ordering like something that you can very easily track, more so than like a lasagna or something where it's like I have literally no idea what's in this or how to track it. So that way you can still like estimate portion sizes as best as possible. So I have clients do that until they get a little bit more comfortable. So just kind of like the same thing that we talk about, like how to plan a meal if you were at home, using that same approach when you're out to eat.
Yeah. Yeah. Like visually picking apart a plate is really big. Cause like for me, if I'm like right now, my default at most places is like the plainest salad that I can get with like a lean protein and dressing on the side, or whatever lean protein entree. It's usually chicken or steak, and it's usually like sirloin or chicken breast. And it's grilled and it comes with two sides. Like, great, super easy. Don't even have to think about it. Sometimes they'll even say like, this is an 8-ounce chicken breast. Like, great. I even know how much it weighs.
Yeah, that's perfect. And then if you do have the opportunity to know where you're going out to eat prior, that's even better. But you can go and kind of like look at their menu, get an idea, and that way you're feeling more confident ahead of time with what exactly you want to order. So you're not like that last person being like, I don't know, can you come back to me?
That's always
And
me
then
still.
yeah, oh gosh, always. And then also like if they do have their nutritional information online, like great, and you can plug things in. And there have been opportunity, or like my stepmom, like they said that, you know, they went out to a restaurant one time and they thought that they were eating something healthy, and they got like a turkey burger versus like the regular burger. And they went home and looked at the nutrition information. They were like, oh my God, it was just loaded in fat. So, that's kind of what we talked about earlier with salads, is like salads aren't necessarily healthy or not healthy. It just kind of depends what you do with it. So if it's loaded with like cheese and croutons and like candied nuts, and like the dressing is like super oil based, and then that's how you can really rack up a lot of calories. But like if you're Marissa and you just get a bed of lettuce and like chicken, then that's not really going to be anything at all.
Yeah, usually the house or the Caesar is always a safe bet, and then just the dressing on the side.
Yeah. Vinaigrettes are also really good too.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I had one more thing. Oh, random, but sometimes on sandwiches. So this is like a personal favorite hack because I love Rubens, and that's like my favorite sandwich of all time. But guess what? Corned beef, not that lean. So basically, I will oftentimes ask for a meat swap. So instead of corned beef, can I have roast beef? If they have like, usually if it's a place with sandwiches, they'll have like a Reuben, they'll have a French dip, they'll have a turkey sandwich. So like they have all the meats, they're all there. I've only been to one place that's been like, no, we can't do that. When I'm like, you literally serve turkey sandwiches. What do you mean? And at that place in particular, it actually depended on the waiter, not on the staff in the kitchen. So it was just someone being grumpy with me. But yeah, so a meat swap and sandwiches, random, but helpful.
Yeah, so lots of takeaways. And I think just to kind of like wrap everything up, because this was supposed to be a short episode, but we had a little bit of a tangent, but it's still shorter than our other ones. It's just kind of like, this, everything that we ever talk about all the time, always, is just everything is a learning opportunity. So going out to eat, it's not like you have to be perfect every single time, and how you order can change depending on the context. So if you do need to kind of be a little bit more strict and more accurate, then, that's okay. And that's what you need to do in that moment. And then you're going to have other opportunities when you can splurge and eat how you want to eat and have it not even really be anything that you think of. So it really just depends on where you're at and what your goals are. And sometimes at the end of the day, memories over macros.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yep. Well, awesome. Do we have anything else or?
No.
Okay, cool. So we hope that you guys enjoyed this episode. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. You can find both of us on Instagram. You can find me at Christy Lane Fit. Marissa is at Marissa Roy Fitness. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we hope to see you back next week.